is Jamie. I live in Saudi Arabia and I have a makeup collection that just keeps getting larger, but not today. Today we're gonna be doing something else, and I am gonna be 100% honest with you. I have already tried to film this one time and it was going. It wasn't my favorite per se, and it was a little bit clunky and it was going. I wasn't altogether happy, but it's fine, workable. And then as I kept going, I started to very much dislike the look I was doing. So I took it all off and I am starting all over because I hated it. We'll see if my eyelids are actually gonna tolerate anything that I do from here on out. So anyway, I wanted to kind of start on a little project that is, you know, maybe something that people will enjoy, but it could be more for me. I don't know. We're just gonna have to find out together, and yeah, we'll see. As I mentioned in a previous video, I have a degree in art history and I am an elementary school teacher, and I've been kind of the attitude that my talents, creativity, and education prior to me being an elementary school teacher are a bit wasted. And so therefore I sort of want to put my money where my mouth is, and I want to work on something that kind of marries some of my various interests and past experiences in a way that might be fun. So I don't know. Let's talk about it. What I want to do is I want to do my makeup. I want to use older things, and that's another thing I should discuss and bring up. As much as I enjoy trying new makeup, I don't think my wallet likes it, and it's just not reasonable to keep buying stuff and not use what I have. But also I want to continue to make content, and I'm not good enough at things in order to do like tutorial based content, and nobody likes that shit anyway anymore. So segueing back to what I was originally talking about, what I would like to do is I would like to do my makeup, talk about maybe a piece of artwork or a monument that I have learned about in college, and maybe I even taught about in Art History 101, and also something that I have maybe seen in person. For today, what I'm going to be talking about is not only Sainte Chapelle, but about the time I went to Sainte Chapelle. So if something like this interests you, I would really enjoy it if you stuck around with me and maybe gave it a try, because I'm not altogether confident in what I'm doing, and we're just gonna have to figure this out together, because I don't know, man. I'm gonna be using the Age of Opulence palette from Beauty Bay, and to be honest, I don't like this palette that much because I've already wiped it off once, and you know what? I've had a similar experience with this palette before. Rude, impolite, not nice. Yeah, you, knock it off. My cat is like digging around in my, whatever it's called. Like I mentioned, today we're gonna be talking about Sainte Chapelle. And Sainte Chapelle is a Roman Catholic church in the Archdiocese of Paris, meaning that it is located in fact, Paris, France. So if you want to come take a trip with me to France, let's go. So first and foremost, Sainte Chapelle is actually no longer a working church. It was secularized during the French Revolution, which means that anybody can go to it. You can go to it. I definitely recommend that you do. So construction began in 1238 or sometime after 1238, and it was completed in 1248, and it was commissioned by Louis IX. Dead ass. I had to look up things about Roman numerals, because guess what? I am not good with Roman numerals, as it turns out. 9 is 1x, and I had no idea. Louis was also known as Saint Louis, and this church was constructed during what would have been the French Crusades, and Louis himself led both the 7th and 8th, not very successful, French Crusades in the Middle East. Louis himself died in Algeria in 1270. The chapel was commissioned to house relics, and we'll talk more about relics in a minute. The church was allegedly meant to house the crown of thorns that was worn by Christ at the time of the crucifixion. Fun fact, the crown of thorns that I'm talking about was up until recently housed in the Notre Dame Cathedral, and it survived the fire in 2019 and is now housed in the Louvre Museum in Paris. So if you want to go see it, that's where you're doing. A note on relics. So a relic essentially is a small item, usually of religious significance, such as but not limited to something like the crown of thorns, but also it can be anything like the bones of a saint. So relics are usually housed in little reliquaries, which are carved into the churches themselves. Because of these relics often become sites for religious pilgrimages. So people will be traveling all around Europe in order to go see these things and often pray to their favorite saint or whatever. Like literally it could be a saint's fingernails, stuff like that. I've heard of like hair. One of the more notable relics is the Shroud of Turin. And the reason that relics are so important at this time is because most of, the Catholic Church's followership cannot read. So it does tend to give them a strong physical connection to their faith in their natural world. So relics themselves were also used more or less as potent devices during the Counter-Reformation. So the Catholic Church, again, wanted to really establish their hold on people of Earth and not make faith such an abstract concept for people who can't read. However, Sainte Chapelle was constructed during the Crusades. There we go. Sainte Chapelle was constructed during the Crusades, which means that France/Louis was over in the Middle East, taking stuff probably that didn't belong to him, side note, and was sending them back to France, and these were all like usually stolen artifacts of religious significance. And the reason that, for instance, Louis would do this is because it would, again, kind of give him a physical tie to heaven. As in, if he is the steward of these religious artifacts that have deep, profound meaning for the faith, then he then becomes the steward of the faith on earth in monarch form, which, if you are into absolute monarchy, you kind of gotta do. So I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to cut my crease with this Beauty Creations Pastel Please color-based primer in I Lilac You. So when we come back, I'll have a cut crease and then we'll continue from there. Thanks. Hold, please. Okay, welcome back. And I gotta say, each time I've used this particular color-based primer, I'm always like, yes. Yes, 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 yes. Whatever is going on here, I love it. So why do we study Sainte Chapelle? So Sainte Chapelle kind of represents the be-all, end-all culmination of Gothic architectural style. In addition to that, it houses the most extensive collection of 13th century stained glass that we have. So when I talk about Gothic architectural style, what do I mean? In an article from the worldhistory.org website, in an article written by Hilary Smith, I'm just gonna read it, so deal with it. Gothic cathedrals are some of the most recognizable and magnificent architectural feats, with soaring towers and softly filtered light streaming through stained glass windows. Everything about the Gothic cathedral is transportive and ethereal, lifting the gaze of the viewer towards the heavens. Architectural innovations such as flying buttresses were essential to creating the Gothic style, but it was the new and intentional use of light that truly set Gothic architecture apart from its heavier and darker Romanesque predecessors. So the entire point of the style's development was to allow for the construction of thinner walls, higher ceilings, and bigger windows in order to let in more light. All you ever really need to know about Gothic architecture is let the light in. And is this doing what I want it to do? The vaulted ceilings would hold the weight of the building and the ceiling and the roof more effectively. That would allow for thinner walls and more installation of windows, and more windows equals more stained glass. One architectural element that is common among Gothic churches is the rib vaulting in the ceiling. And I'll insert a picture here that basically funnels the weight of the roof down into pillars so it doesn't have to be spread out across an entire wall. So it looks like ribs, just so you know. Hi, Editing Jamie here. So for some reason I don't have footage of me saying this. I don't know what happened, but two more architectural elements that are common among Gothic churches are flying buttresses. The most common example are the external flying buttresses of Notre Dame Cathedral. And then the other one is a triportal door. Usually there's one on each side, one on the west side and one on the east side. On the east side, it usually depicts scenes of like the Garden of Eden and creation of man. And then on the west side is usually depicting Last Judgment. So back to you in your room, Jamie. Then one of the last defining features of a Gothic church is the rose window, which typically is on the western facade as well. And I venture to say that this architectural element is largely decorative and just, again, is intended to let more light into the church. And it is a rose window. So it's a circular window in the shape of a rose, and it has stained glass in it. About the stained glass windows in Sainte-Chapelle. So there are 15 windows that are 15 meters high that depict 1,113 scenes from the Old Testament, the New Testament, up until the delivery of the crown of thorns to Paris. I can tell you that the installation of stained glass at the time was very expensive. And also, blue pigment, if I'm not mistaken, in all artwork is one of the most expensive pigments to work with. So Louis was basically saying like, hey, look, I'm a rich dude and I'm gonna put all of this stained glass that requires a lot of metalwork and skilled labor, and I'm gonna put 15 windows full of it and make it 15 meters high, and look how rich and powerful I am. So there's that. The reason that they put so much money and effort into these types of installations was because artwork was used to express or depict scenes from the Bible in order to make it more accessible to people. So remember, this is the 13th century. This is pre-Renaissance, technically. And this is at a time when most people could not read. So although this is a royal church, and I would imagine that everybody that would ever have attended this church would probably not only be able to read, but also be able to speak and understand Latin, because remember, at this point, all sermons and anything to do with the Bible was delivered in Latin, not French or whatever language would be spoken in whatever country at the time. Most people at this point in time cannot read. So artwork is intended to bring the subject matter to life for people. So they can see Christ in front of them. They can see the stories of the Bible. And the stained glass in Sainte-Chapelle is very, very detailed. So you also have to imagine, like, these are people that have never seen a screen before, for instance. So it would almost literally be when the sun illuminates those windows that the scenes are coming out and coming to life. All of this is meant to inspire a greater devotion to God, which sounds nice and stuff, but whatever. Well, since I've given you a very brief history about Sainte-Chapelle, I am going to get into my personal connection / interest in it. So I definitely did study Sainte-Chapelle and Gothic churches during college. So let's fast forward now to August 17th, 2017. And that would make me, I want to say 26 years old at the time. So this was my first trip outside of the US. I was going to visit my best friend in Germany. And as we started planning my trip out there more and more, we got a little ambitious and we decided to plan a trip to go see a bit more of Europe, which I'll get into another time because I saw a lot this trip. did a lot of things, saw a lot of stuff. So this was my very first time out of the US. I had landed in Germany, spent a few days in Germany. My friend lives close to the French border. So we decided that we were going to catch a flight from Paris to an undisclosed city that I will tell you about later. And I'm sure you can imagine, come on. We caught a bullet train at, I wanna say 7:30 in the morning. It was very, very early, and by the by, a bullet train is super fast. I believe this particular train got up to 300 kilometers per hour. I have no idea what that is in miles per hour. You do the conversion on that shit. I don't care. So we caught that train real ass early, and we got into Paris at approximately 10:21 a.m. And I don't actually remember when our flight was, but we had a few hours to kill just to like sightsee, get some lunch, stuff like that. So a couple notes about Paris. So first of all, good and bad. So first of all, very conveniently, in the train stations, you can actually stow your luggage in the train station, and it's just like in a locker that you can pay for. And I mean, like, I think we had to kind of work industriously to shove our stuff in there, but you know what? I appreciate that. It worked. It was fine. So all we had to do is come back later and pick up our stuff, and I think we caught the train to the airport. We didn't fly from Charles de Gaulle. We flew from like an outlying airport outside of Paris, which was kind of weird, but you know what? Flights are cheap, man. And then Paris itself is set up in a particular way, which makes it really easy to find all of the monuments. So this term is an art history term called Haussmannization, which is the redesigning of Paris in order to navigate or point all of the roads to its major monuments. Blammo. You're welcome for that. I paid money for that just to give it to you. One thing to keep aware of in Paris is that I haven't been obviously in quite a while, but even at the time, it was fairly full of like scam artists, and we did get approached by some people that wanted us to like fill out a clipboard. If you're ever in Paris, don't do that because they are trying to pickpocket your shit. And I was super dorky for a couple of reasons. I mean, more reasons than one, let's be serious. And I had a big coat that then I wore my purse on underneath. But also, it wasn't even a big coat. I still have this jacket, by the way. I was wearing shorts. Like, it was rainy and it was kind of cold that morning that we left. But I also needed shorts for where we were going. So it wasn't like I could just like not wear shorts. I don't know. So I figured like, yeah, I'll be tough and I will figure it out. And it was honestly fine, but it was kind of rainy and cold that morning. So I looked a little bit stupid with my big jacket, and we looked very touristy, let's put it that way. So I had this big jacket and then my purse underneath it and all in an effort to, you know, not get pickpocketed and stuff. Sainte Chapelle is obviously now a historical site, and you are able to book, and they do recommend booking your tickets beforehand. There are some prohibited items, so you can't like bring your Pepsi or some shit in there. And I think we did book our tickets beforehand, and it's something like, I don't know what it was at the time, but it was like 11 or 12 euros or something. It wasn't major, but it was definitely on my we must see this list. I had to see it. It was a no negotiations. All right, so to summarize, the pros of walking around in Paris is that number one, you can drop off your stuff at the train station. I don't even know that you have to have a train. I don't remember. And also it is technically very easy to find your way to stuff like national monuments in Paris because the city is designed to make it easy. And you can definitely walk there. Cons. Asking for directions is a faux pas, so don't. And also, yeah, people will pickpocket. Just know that that's a thing. We got there, and as I remember, there's a lower chapel and an upper chapel. And the lower chapel is kind of the area where you wait in line, you get ready to go in, they take your stuff. I wanna say they go through your purses too, and they make sure you don't have any prohibited items that they won't allow in the church itself. And then you can look around and go up to the upper chapel. And I think that there is a statue of Louis himself in that upper chapel. So when I tell you that it is beautiful, it is easily one of my top 10 most beautiful, like one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. Some of the most breathtaking things I've ever seen. And just, even on a gray day, even with not a lot of sunlight, the whole chapel is just luminous. And I'll hold up a picture here. By the way, this is like my bad brow era. This is my bad makeup era. This was a while ago. And yeah, I would like to say that I would characterize my experience there as having my very first artgasm. So for me, this was like one of the best things that I've ever seen to date. So, you know, I'm just coming from the United States. I just left Idaho for the first time. Not Idaho for the first time, that's not true, but I had just left the United States for the first time. At the time, I was feeling incredibly privileged to be there and be able to see something that amazing. And yeah, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I would love to go back. And I will also include some tender moments of me weeping in this chapel because I am a nerd. And yeah, like I said, it was not just that I'm a nerd, but it was for me a real privileged moment to be able to kind of live the dream of being able to see these things. So, you know, like, given where I'd come from and given just like how I had always devoted a lot of my life to horses and I wasn't able to travel very much, I had always dreamed of being able to see these things, and I had always like thought to myself like, wow, yeah, this is super cool. I would love to go see that. And finally it was kind of happening for me. And definitely this trip, this visit really opened a lot of the world for me, and I loved it. It was super cool to visit my friend in Europe, and she still lives there. So, you know, hopefully one of these days I can go back soon and go see it again. To be honest, like, I don't feel that like seeing it twice would be bad. You know, something like that means so much to so many people around the world and is an architectural feat for, you know, the 13th century. Like, come on, that's crazy. And yeah, I recommend you go. All right, so here we have the finished look. What I really wanted to do is kind of give you a representation of the stained glass windows. There's a very purple blue light that filters into the chapel, and I kind of wanted to emulate that in my eye look. Gems never hurt. A little, you know, gold liner never hurt, and I'm really happy with the look. It did finally turn out. I gotta say, the things that really saved this look for me were the pastel primer situation from Beauty Creations, and then also the Pastels palette from Beauty Bay. I don't necessarily like that Age of Opulence palette just by itself, but it does kind of function well with a couple of other elements. So it's not available anyway. So it's fine, whatever. Anyway, please let me know if you're interested in me continuing this style of video, and I have some plans for the future that I wanted to talk about, and I don't know, it's fun. Hang out, stick around, let's do our makeup together, talk about art history and shit. Yeah, let me know if there's anything else you want to know about, and I will catch you next time.